Welcome to a presentation pair on accessibility and universal design. Just in case you aren't familiar with the format, what typically happens is we have a couple of folks talking about something similar. One person will present for 15 minutes, and then the next person will present for 15 minutes, and then there'll be about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. These folks have actually conspired a bit, so there may be a little more fluidity between the first and the second sessions. I think you're in for a treat. First, we'll have Tom Tobin, who's an author and a speaker, and then Brian Olodike, who is an instructional technologist at the Pennsylvania State University. And without further ado.
All right, thank you very much, Beth, and welcome everybody. My name is Tom Tobin.
Brian Olodike.
And we'd like to talk to you about a couple of housekeeping measures here. You'll notice that everybody has a wand in front of you, and these are souvenirs for you to take home. And on there you'll see our website, so it's a shameless marketing plug. Yes, but these are also great for your kids. Also, please do evaluate this session. EDUCAUSE wants your feedback on whether this was useful, whether it was fun, whether we talked about research or we just talked about cat videos on the internet. And so please go on to the EDUCAUSE web program and evaluate this session. Also, we have a paper evaluation and rating form here. You can save yourself time at the end. Just circle all the 5s now. But there's an important part here. We're also giving out a prize, and that is Sheryl Burgstaller's book called Universal Design in Higher Education. It just came out with the 2nd edition. And if you put your name on that piece of paper to the side here and tear that off, we will be collecting for a prize at the end of our time here today. One of the first things they do when you become a professional speaker is they tell you have to have your own fishbowl. I have mine, so let's go. So let's talk for a couple of seconds. What do you already know about universal design for learning? Just words, phrases, ideas, things that come to mind. Proactive. Proactive.
Inclusive.
Inclusive. Choice.
Universal.
Accessibility.
Universal.
He's presenting them. What other words and phrases come to mind? So far we're getting a good list together. Student-centric. It's focused on what students are able to do. What else pops in?
Standards-based.
Standards, absolutely. Exactly one here too. So those are all positive things. Those are all how universal design should go. Now let's talk for just a second about how universal design for learning often does actually go at our institutions. And for that, we should listen to Hermione from the Harry Potter movies. I'd like you to answer a very different question. All of us in this room, we are the rock stars on our campus. We know instructional design, we know instructional technology, we know about inclusive design, we know about adaptive learning, personalization. We're the people who are actually making that stuff happen. But I'd like you to answer this next question from the perspective of your faculty colleagues. Do we have any faculty members in the room? Your primary role is faculty member? Awesome, we can talk freely. So, when we say universal design for learning, what do faculty members actually hear? We mean inclusive design. We mean adaptive learning. We mean designing for how students demonstrate their skills, how they get information, how they stay engaged. But when faculty members hear that, what do they relate it to? You've talked to faculty members about UDL or inclusive design. How do they respond? It's too much work.
No support.
There's no support for it.
Making course materials accessible.
I need to make my course materials accessible.
And that's all I need to do.
And that's all I need to do and I'm done. Andrew's going to pay me, and we're running up at least time. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What other things do they say?
Don't have time for this.
I don't have time for this. It's too complicated.
Is there a group on campus for that?
Isn't there a group on campus for that? Beg pardon?
Isn't that your job?
Isn't that your job? Yeah, absolutely. So let me back up and talk about why universal design for learning, even though we in this room all know it's an awesome thing to do, it's a good practice to adopt, why, according to the last Pew Research study, only about 10% of faculty members in the United States and Canada have adopted a universal design for learning practice, like captioning videos, like doing transcripts, the simple stuff that we all know how to do and how to support. 10%. Why is that number not larger? Because when we say UDL, they don't know what we're talking about. And they make the mental association with something that they do understand, and that is the student who comes to you with a piece of paper at the end of the second week of class, because the paperwork never gets done on time, and says, I need time and a half on my tests. So how do faculty members actually react? Yes, I'll do that. I'll put you in touch with our disability services office on campus, all that kind of stuff. But what are they thinking inside? We've heard some of those things. Right? So, like Hagrid, a waste of time. Or, I'm confused. I don't know how to respond to this. Or, isn't there an office for that? Isn't that the job of the people in the disability services area or our IT folks?
Anything you couldn't explain it or angry or scared.
So, even when the response out loud is the right one, when faculty members think about universal design for learning, they're typically thinking from a position of negative emotions. They're either mad about it, they're a little afraid, they don't know where to start, or they say, isn't there somewhere else on campus who can help me? It's those negative emotions that the neuroscientists tell us are the things that keep people from trying the good practices that we've been preaching about for years and years and years. You'll notice we've gotten this far, I haven't even defined UDL yet. Because you folks know what we're talking about. You folks know the sort of basic level stuff. What I want to suggest to you is we have to reframe universal design for learning.
Everyone please, not panic.
Probably not the right way to go. Asking people not to panic about it, but they do. It's those negative emotions.
Wrong over to the dark side.
And so those of you who know both of these movies know I'm mixing my genres up a little bit here. But if faculty members have those negative emotional reactions to something that we perceive as emotionally neutral, or as a net positive for all of our students, it's no wonder that only about 10% of faculty members have adopted universal design for learning processes.
No different, only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
So basically, we should listen to Yoda. And so if we are going to unlearn what you have learned, then we need a new way to talk to faculty colleagues about universal design for learning. And I want to suggest one way that we can do that, and then Brian's going to show you a very practical way that we can demonstrate it to faculty colleagues.
Received an urgent order from the Ministry of Magic and left immediately.
In the Harry Potter universe, people still communicate with owls. I need to get a hold of you, so I'll send an owl to you. The owl comes, says the message, and then leaves. Perhaps to go to the mouse bar or something. I don't know where they go on off hours. But here's how we reframe universal design for learning. Think for a minute about the students on your campuses who have mobile phones. According to some of the research that just came out for 2016, that's 83% of all college and university learners have a smartphone. Not just any, a smartphone. And according to research that Google did, they're using their smartphones at all hours of the day and night in order to find information and connect with people. So, to reframe universal design for learning, we should stop talking about people with disabilities. Ooh, he said that out loud. We should stop talking only about people with disabilities. I have to be careful when I say that because I advocate for the rights of everybody. I want to lower learning barriers all over the place. But if we talk to our faculty colleagues about reaching out to all of our students on their mobile devices, send them an hour, then we've taken away that negative emotional valence that we just talked about a couple minutes ago. With that in mind, You folks know this as well as I do. What are some of the strategies that we can use to reach out to our learners on their mobile devices? You're doing them at your campuses now, all that. What's one thing?
Alert texts.
Alert text, being able to have students' mobile numbers and sending out information in small bites. Hey, don't forget the midterm is coming up. The study guide's just been posted. If you put that in your learning management system as an announcement, it'll take between 2 and 3 days for everybody in the class to see it. If you send that out as a text message, it takes between 2 and 3 hours for everybody to see it. What other things can we do to reach out to students where they are on their mobile devices?
Social media.
For example,
Twitter.
using Twitter to send out information to the class and to get information back, making it a two-way street. It's fun. What other things can we do to reach out to students on their mobile devices?
Beacons, clickers, assessment.
Yeah, beacons, clickers, assessment. So giving students the ability to take tests and quizzes, or if you're not comfortable with that, as most faculty still aren't, then at least giving them the practice test or the practice quiz so that they can do that at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're getting off their swing shift job. Or that they can utilize the text transcript of a video because they have to turn the sound down because the kids are in bed, right? Think about your adult learners who have work and family responsibilities, and that's the reframing for universal design for learning.
What's this all about?
Here's the part where we define universal design for learning. The folks at CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology in Boston, they're the ones who came up with the idea of universal design for learning. UD, universal design, that's the built environment. That's ramps, that's curb cuts, that's wider doors, so that nobody has to request to be treated specially just to gain access to a building. Well, the idea behind universal design for learning is similar. You give people access to the information that they need, and you also give them the ability to demonstrate their knowledge in more than one way. And so the way that UDL from CAST works, I got these, they make nice pointers. Okay. Is they talk about having multiple means of learner engagement. Signposting, way to go. This should only take you should take you 2 minutes to read. Giving estimates for how long things will take. Here are the things you should know now, and here are the things you should be working on now. Multiple ways of representing information. This is the one we all think about. This is captions, this is transcripts, this is giving people alternatives there, and multiple ways of demonstrating action choices. This is the one we don't often think about. This is allowing students to write the traditional 3-page essay, or give you a 3 or 4 minute video, turn the selfie camera on your phone to good use. Hi, I'm Tom. I'm a student in Lee's course, and I'm going to tell you about the research that I did on marketing. So when we tell faculty members this, their eyes kind of glaze over, because we're talking neuroscience happening. What I'd like to do is reframe a little bit and say there's really only one thing we need to tell faculty colleagues about universal design for learning. We do the readings and the research. We tell them that universal design for learning is really just +1 thinking. And if you think about the interactions in a course environment, and this could be face-to-face, blended, or online, if you think about the interactions that students have with materials, with each other, with the instructor, and with the wider world, do those in +1 thinking. If you have that happening one way, do it in one more way. A faculty member who says, I have 82 videos in my course, and you tell me I have to caption them tomorrow or I'll be in legal trouble, that turns into analysis paralysis, and they don't do anything. So +1 thinking is a wonderful way to jumpstart that conversation and put a nice little white picket fence around, this is possible, here's where to start. So the first reframing is let's reframe it away from just serving people with disabilities and turn it into a conversation about mobile learning. And the next thing to think about is let's reframe it away from the neuroscience, although we all know that, and turn it into, okay, just do one more thing, just have one more way. So if you have faculty colleagues who say, I thought it was just for people with disabilities, I want to take the word accessibility and chop it down. Take the ending off and just talk about access, no matter what. And that means if you have your student who's studying in the middle of the night, the sports team folks who are on the bus going to an away game, they have more than one way to get access to those interactions, then you're doing them a favor. I was talking with Sam Johnston, she's one of the research scientists at CAST, and she said something that will force me to break a cardinal presenter rule. I'm actually going to read this. If you want a situation that's good for everybody, it's thinking about what has to happen at the level of design that makes accommodation less necessary. And so the more we can do to tell faculty colleagues, hey, do this kind of work, and you're not going to have 700 of the same emails in week 2, because students will have more than one way to understand the material. Do this kind of work up front, and you're going to have more students pass the class. You're going to have more students retained. They're going to persist better. They're going to be more satisfied with their experience of your course. We have 34 years of data that help to prove this.
I've watched them all day and they're the worst sort of muggles imaginable.
So if we're all the wizards, and we know who the muggles are, our faculty colleagues here, I want to turn it over to Brian. He's going to show you some examples.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm unfortunately going to be podium locked because I'm going to do a demo here. But does everyone have their wand? Their wand? Pull up. This is cheap audience engagement at its finest. Yes, so I don't believe in any of that. Right? Because to me, magic is actually technology we just can't comprehend and understand. Does anyone know this quote? Right? So I think of magic and I think Iron Man and Marvel movies, and Tom kind of back into a corner where I have to have a movie reference of some kind, unfortunately. But, hey Jarvis, are our materials accessible? Jarvis.
Sir, there are still terabytes of calculations needed.
Thanks. So really that's a fancy way of saying, no, I'm not really sure. Unfortunately. So who has been in this situation recently? Could you tell me with 100% accuracy everything you've done is accessible? No hands straight. Oh, Tom is the only person everything he's ever done is accessible. It's fantastic. So let's say, I don't know, you work at a big university that recently got sued about this topic. Don't know anyone in particular, but so what do? You go to the specification. Yay! If we just make everything to spec, then it'll just be accessible. That'll be fantastic. Does anyone know what that entails? Things like putting alt tags on everything, and making sure you don't use the Netscape Navigator 1.0 blink tag. It never even existed, but still does for jokes, right? Making sure headings are in order, all that fun stuff, right? And so, after several years of that, yay, we made it accessible. What a crazy roller coaster that was, of just clicking the edit button in LMSs galore and making sure there was alt info everywhere. But that's only part of it, right? That's kind of making an accommodation again. This is no longer an image, it's an image of whatever. And so I kind of wanted to look at where do we go from there? Because eventually that problem is solved, right? We'll have robots that can just kind of auto-caption and OCR type of stuff. And so I went exploring one day. So the first thing, and this is just kind of a general reference link, for your uses, is A11yproject.com, which I just learned the other day. Does anyone know why it's A11y is the short for accessibility?
The letters.
Thank you. I had no idea. Someone said, oh, there's 11 letters in between there, but they did this. Made sure there was. So they have a blog, it's just kind of awareness raising. There's some good articles on there about captioning, things like that, right? It's a decent resource to point people to when you initially are met with the reaction Tom was pointing to of, ugh, right? The next thing I found was a little more out there. So I don't have dyslexia, but it is very difficult for me to focus on anything. But especially words. I had a lot of trouble reading when I was a lot younger. And so I actually found this font help me. This is a font that's been engineered with people that have dyslexia, and it kind of changes the shapes of the letters. We'll show how it works, what it does. But you can apply it to anything. It's an open font. So opendyslexic.org. And then I said, that Jarvis thing was neat, like that canned presentation thing where I just said Jarvis and then made the slide to it, but I want to build my own Jarvis. And so I work on a project called Homes Learning Network. It's what the snowflakes are about, we tweet incessantly about it. but it has built-in support for this thing called Anyang. And Anyang allows for two-way conversation with the browser. No additional tools required, right? So this is where the UDL, when we got paired up, I said, wow, this is UDL, I didn't even know, is I want to eliminate things like dragging text, right? I want to eliminate things like JAWS. It should just, that's the way it is. That's behavior that should be available to everyone, right? And it's, again, the comma placement is very important as well. It's not that those aren't important, it's that you shouldn't be required to use Firefox 32 RC1 plus the JAWS browser to get access to this one little learning interaction. Does that ring a bell for anyone? That might have a keyboard or something weird. I don't want any of that anymore. So part of that is just building a voice-based system. Anyang is an open source library. Everything we do in Elms is open source. And so we're going to jump off to a demo. There is a link on there if you want to play along or whatever. At elmsln.org. It's also a link for my next session. I won't do that plug there yet. That's a reset. All right, so this is elmsln.org, but cheated, and there's automatically a link to what I wanted to go to. And so we're going to kind of look at some of the UDL principles that we baked into this. Things like N+1 formats, just in general the way that we've structured our system. So if you're not familiar with Elms Learning Network, we kind of take a different approach to an LMS. Think of the LMS as flipped into the background, right? Some people say you only want to send people to the dungeon when they've been bad. And so if that's like the grade book and discussion boards and things like that, we send them there. But the bulk of their experience is with content, a content-based system, which could be emitting learning analytics, what this little course is about. But so some of the features of this can be found in preferences. So with the preferences, we have interface modifications. And everything here is open source, so if you have questions on what exactly is powering this, please ask. But so simple things like let users adjust the screen real estate to what they want, right? So you've probably seen things like that. It's not a big deal. Make the text bigger, make it smaller. Cool. Things like changing the contrast, right? So does anyone know how to go into their computer and adjust the contrast for their machine? Anyone? Okay, 1, 2.
It's different on every single.
Exactly, it's different on every single machine. So whenever that comes up, I say that's unacceptable. It should just be click a button and it happens. So this is actually a CSS filter applied to everything on the page. And then it will keep track of this whenever you go anywhere else. So, for example, the contrast got jacked up on everything here. Another way you can use this is do things like jack the contrast up on everything and then go, well, what isn't accessible now, right? Because like this little image I made down here is very unreadable. Now I just made this for the purpose of this demonstration, so I cannot audit this for accessibility necessarily. Some other things we do, we can invert colors, right? So kind of turn out the lights. If you have light sensitivity issues, that can help. And then I can start to look at it and go, okay, well, we have to account for it in those areas. It didn't apply to the image, for example. We can disable interface animations. This is the Open Dyslexic integration. So if I say optimize font for dyslexia, we can automatically apply the font. Again, if you go to Open Dyslexic, it says, hey, you can tell users to come and download this font and then apply it and override their default font on their... No, I'm not doing any of that, right? It should be instantaneous. I should click a button, I should refresh the page, and it just knows, oh, you want to use the Open Dyslexic font. It's about bringing these changes to the user's ability that they can just do whatever. There's this thing that says continuous listening mode for voice commands, and you'll notice there's this weird, creepy circle there, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. Some other things I wanted to do, I think a big part of UDL, and I noticed this happened at Penn State, was it's just so hard to empathize with a condition you don't have. So it's one thing to use a screen reader or to use JAWS as a sighted person, and it's another to watch someone struggle using a JAWS screen reader. And I noticed there was a big change at our campus when someone sat there and tried to use a learning management system who was blind using JAWS, and they basically just made everyone sit there and watch this person struggle to say, like, this is part of what this is about. So we started to bake in some simulations, and so one of those is, I found this interesting one that does dyslexia simulation. And so it goes and dynamically flips every other letter. Now this isn't perfect, right? Does anyone have dyslexia? Is this sort like, it is a little, it's like sped up intentionally, right? Part of this is like shock and awe. So it's not exactly like that, but I mean, it is kind of, it moved around, right? So that's kind of attempting to empathize with a condition that's very hard to really grasp unless someone tells you in detail about it. We also have, when that refreshes the browser, we also have field simulation. So I can do a central field loss, right, if you have glaucoma. I can do peripheral field loss. We actually use this one in working on the interface to say, like, okay, well, critical information can't be towards the edges, right? Now that might be as simple as an icon that has a label with it. If it was just the icon, it might be out of purview. You might not see it while you're just glancing around. We also have support for, and this sometimes ticks the browser off. This just applied a color filter. Did anyone notice the color change? It's a little hard on a projector. But this is going to dynamically filter everything, even video, based on running it through a CSS filter for different color blindness. Mentioned having things in multiple formats. So this is a media player that I found called Able Player. Has anyone heard of Able Player? Few people? Cool. So Able Player is a highly accessible video player and MP3 player as well. But it has support for if you feed it a closed caption file that you can then start to just jump around. Right, so if anyone saw the poster sessions out in the hall, there was one about 3Play Media and who uses transcription, and a lot of times closed captioning is used by people that aren't deaf, right? English is a second language. It's popular if I'm having trouble understanding a concept because it's really hard, having that additional method, right? So that's kind of the plus one, right? So I'm hearing it maybe, I'm watching it, and I'm also able to read along. Has 3 different methodologies for it. And here we've also got, this is a highly interactive, it's H5P activity. You've seen H5P, so I can drag these onto the word, right? That's great for me because I can see that, right? But so we've got baked-in support for our platform for, well, what's a fallback? And so we can supply okay, this form of media is highly interactive, it's not going to work for everybody. And then we admit that, and instead of shutting down and not using it, then we back away, put it in a new form. And now, so my Jarvis system. So this has been tracking everything I say, and it's spitting it out in the console. You can see that. I have to stop when it processes my voice. So, hey, Elms. Hey, Elms.
What's up?
Open preferences. Alternate formats. Open speed reader. Speed reader play. Right, so this is an alternate form of content ingestion. It's where it actually brings the words to your eye instead of your eyes being brought to the words. So we can kind of wire all these different things together. We can even transform our learning ecosystems into things that are much more like Google Home, right? So what is universal design for learning?
From Wikipedia called Universal Design for Learning, UDL is an educational framework based on research in the learning sciences, including cognitive neuroscience, that guides the development.
All right, so close it. I don't want to read the whole thing. But these are all things we can build with open source, and now I don't need to have Dragon voice processing. I don't need to have a screen reader. I can kind of start to build an interface in the way that a screen reader would absorb it. And so it kind of gives us a radically different way of going about accessibility instead of just it being accessible. So that, back to here.
And so to wrap things up for us, you've heard a little bit about the neuroscience and about how we can approach conversations with senior campus leaders and faculty members in order to help reframe universal design for learning. And Brian has shown you a couple of tools that you can get access to and play around with and help do the development process on them in order to be able to show faculty members some of the benefits of adopting good inclusive design practices and get a little bit of empathy for some of the folks whom they'll be working with. So we're talking both about all learners on their mobile phones, and we're talking about people with disabilities as well. And so I'd like to keep with one of our themes.
Then we'll have you require. Already know you. That which you need.
Now that you have Yoda's blessing, we want to send you folks out and back to your campuses to do good work. I want to just mention one thing though. The need to make changes is not always this obvious. I lived in Chicago for 12 years. Last year, I was going grocery shopping. My wife continued on into the grocery store. I stopped. I took a picture. This picture. Anybody know what's wrong with this picture? Say it out loud with me here. Yeah, the cart return is in the spot for people with disabilities. So I got on Twitter. I sent the picture. I said, "Dear at name of grocery store, this is at Thomas J. Tobin. Not cool. I'm at your River Forest, Illinois location." Power of social media. 5 minutes later, I hadn't even picked up my oranges and bananas yet. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzes in my pocket. It's central command for the grocery store. "Dear at Thomas J. Tobin, indeed not cool. We're calling the store manager right now." Yes. And when I came out, there was someone parked in the spot. Victory! Except they had only moved the cart return over into the striping part so they couldn't open their door. What's the message here? If you're aiming for perfection, you're never going to start. Aim for progress. Aim for tangible benefits. Aim for progress at your institution, and you're going to have a better time with it. Now is the time for conversation. We've got about 10, 15 minutes left here, but also, if you do want to fill out that ratings form, our presentation is at an end, and put your name on that prize drawing. We'll draw for the prize in a couple of seconds, but we definitely want to say thank you very much for coming. You've been an attentive and interactive audience. We loved it. Thank you. What are the kind of takeaways that you're going to come out of our session with? Are there questions that you now have? Have we underlined good things that you're doing? Please.
So is that tool that you showed us, is that just available in that LMS that you developed?
No, so Elms is a highly modular system, but it's built on Drupal, so everything's PHP, Drupal. All the JavaScript libraries powering that are their own standalone things. So really it's a large ecosystem that you can kind of pick apart whatever from.
Okay.
Other takeaways, ideas, questions? Have we raised more questions than answered? That's usually a good session.
For me, the eye-opener was the simulator. Actually showing what dyslexia and color challenges are, because not having those challenges myself, it's hard to put myself in that. And basically, we refer to the accessibility center, and they can't speak for that, so we need to practice experience. Are those simulators available as like a browser extension or something to be used elsewhere?
So they're part of a Drupal module I wrote called ALMY, go figure. But they're kind of broken out into each, and it's like, here's the JavaScript that accomplishes this, here's the CSS that accomplishes this. The color blindness is actually an SVG project I found somewhere that it's basically just a class you apply, and it switches between the 9 different forms of color blindness. The dyslexia simulator is a standalone JavaScript one, but I haven't seen them as like a dedicated plugin. Although a Chrome extension really wouldn't be that hard to engineer out of just the JavaScript to apply to anything.
Other questions, comments, takeaways, last minute entries for prizes?
Yeah, Tom, I just wanted to emphasize, Brian, you brought up how you just show how difficult something is. I'm on accessibility design task force, and we went to the senior leadership, and we had done a complete audit of internal, external, and usability audit for all of our web and teaching and learning tools. We just showed in the usability study somebody trying to use JAWS for just like a minute or two. And we got feedback from like Campus Climate Committee and everyone who attended how they just had no idea. And we hand out the soda straws. I don't know if you've ever done a soda straw demonstration where you just hold the soda straw up to your eye, and that's the field of view when you're looking at a web page that you might be able to see if you have a visual disability. And then you'll notice that the context and the text and the navigation can't be seen in the same field at the same time. So just handing out soda straws sometimes, it's just like a huge impact on people getting the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the challenges is showing folks who are on one side of the ability spectrum what it's like to be on the other side of the ability spectrum. You have to be careful about how you talk to your colleagues when you do those kinds of experiments and demonstrations, because that can reinforce the idea that good design is just for those people. And so one of the ways that we wanted to marry these two together, and Pete, you're making a good point here, is that when you talk to your colleagues, you have to talk to them about the advantages to them. When you do this work, it will help your students to learn better. When you do this work, your students will give you higher ratings on the end of term student rating forms. And there is research that shows this is a correlation. So you have to marry the, oh, by the way, now you get it, with here's what's in it for you. So that's one way to start that conversation.
And universal design benefits every one of the participants, no matter what you're doing, and you don't have to specifically target accessibility.
Absolutely, and if you didn't hear what Pete said, universal design for learning helps all learners. You don't have to target any particular population. All of us in this room know that. It's how we tell our provosts, our presidents, our chancellors, the deans, all of those folks who are making decisions about where they're going to spend their resources. That's what makes the difference. So, other ideas, takeaways, please.
I still don't want to lose sight of the fact that we can only work with the tools that we have. And as your LMS demonstration showed, here's a tool that's made with this in mind, right? Your average ebook, the people that are making and distributing ebooks, you know, they sometimes defeat the accessibility things for digital rights management issues, right? Similarly, we've run into textbook companies that won't give us a text file of something. They will give us if the person is blind because it's required by law, but they won't give it to a student who is dyslexic, for example, and needs the text read to them. So I think this is good, and I totally agree with you. Don't let perfection, keep you from starting. But I would like us as an industry, as a group, to sort of push back against some of the publishers who are creating tools that we will need to be using.
And when I do this talk as a keynote, that is the second half of my talk. Are you okay with a high five? Yes, absolutely. The people who are creating the materials that we use, Pearson, and hold their feet to the fire. Ask for that VPAC. Ask for the voluntary product accessibility template, and help them to understand that this is important to you and it's something that you put into your procurement system. We won't buy it unless it does what we want it to do. And that's one of the ways that we, especially in IT, can hold people's feet to the fire and help raise the awareness on this one. Want to give away a book?
Yeah.
All right. How this usually works.
Wait, can I add?
Okay. Thank you. Nope. And if you were kind enough also to fill out those ratings forms, just fold them in half and leave it in your place on the table. We'll come around later on and pick those up. Well, let's give away a book. How this usually works. We have magic wands in here. I'm not going to ask you to wave them around. But usually the first person to say stop, I stop.
Stop.
See, now at other conferences, someone always just yells out stop immediately. You all have patience. That is awesome. And I'm holding a winner here for Universal Design in Higher Education. It's the second edition from Cheryl Bergstaller. If I give this presentation next year, you can have my book on your DL. And where is Peter Angelos? Down in front, give this man a hand. He is wonderful. We also don't want you folks to go away empty-handed. And so we actually have a bit here. Would you go to the next slide here? Keep kicking this. So if you're on Twitter, just tweet out. If this was a useful session for you, I commit to hashtag UDL, put the hashtag ELI 2017. There's us, and let EDUCAUSE Learning Initiative know that this was a useful session for you. So thank you all. Brian's going to actually get moving for his 4 o'clock presentation. I'm going to go out into the hall here. We're going to clear out in the way of the folks coming in here, but I'd be happy to continue the conversation with any of you. Thank you very much.